Have you ever stopped to think about how our world got so, well, interconnected? I mean, a huge part of the answer is this incredibly powerful economic force that literally shapes everything from the car you drive to the coffee you drink. So today, we're jumping right into what's called foreign direct investment, or FDI. It's truly one of the main engines of globalization.
So let's start with a puzzle you see playing out all the time. Think about it. Starbucks opens thousands of new stores outside the US. Tesla builds these massive gigafactories in places like China and Germany. Samsung drops 17 times billion dollars on a chip plant in America. Why on earth would these huge companies spend billions to build things in other countries?
Well, the answer is a strategy called foreign direct investment, or FDI for short. What it really boils down to is this. It's when a company from one country makes a really big long-term investment in another. And we're not just talking about buying a few shares of stock here. No. We're talking about actually building or buying facilities, factories, stores, offices to produce and sell things abroad. It gives them real skin in the game and a ton of influence over that foreign operation.
So how do they actually do this? Well, it usually comes down to one of three main paths. A company can merge with or acquire an existing foreign company, which, is a super fast way to get into a new market. Or they can do what's called a greenfield investment. And that's exactly what it sounds like. They build a brand new facility, a factory or an office, completely from the ground up on a green field.
Okay, so that covers the what and the how. But the really interesting part, the part that drives all of this, is the why. Why would a company take on all that risk and expense? Well, it all comes down to a very careful, very strategic calculation.
And these big motivations usually fall into four main buckets. First up, companies can be resource-seeking. They're looking for raw materials, maybe cheaper labor, or even specialized skills, think software development in India or high-end engineering in Germany. Then, they can be market-seeking, wanting to get in front of a whole new base of customers. They can also be efficiency-seeking, trying to build a smarter, cheaper, global production line. And last but not least, they might be looking for favorable government policies, like juicy tax breaks or loans that a country offers to lure them in.
And I really want to hit pause here on a super common misconception. It is not always about finding the absolute cheapest person to hire. See, there's a huge difference between low wages and low labor costs. A country could have rock-bottom wages, right? But if the workers aren't very productive because the infrastructure is bad or they lack training, the actual cost to make one single item could be surprisingly high. What companies are really looking for is that sweet spot, skilled, productive workers at a competitive price.
And this quote right here? It just nails that whole market-seeking idea perfectly. Sometimes, the decision is basically made for you. Just imagine a car company like Toyota sets up a new plant in another country. Well, all of its parts suppliers from back home might just have to pack up and set up shop right next door if they want to keep that massive contract. It's like a domino effect that can pull entire supply chains across the globe.
All right, so we get why the company does it. But what about the other side of this whole deal? For the countries that are actually getting all this money and investment, the host countries, FDI is very much a double-edged sword.
On one hand, the benefits can be absolutely massive. The most obvious one is jobs, of course. FDI can also bring in brand new technology and management skills that can spill over and lift up the whole local economy. It can seriously boost a country's exports and kickstart economic development. But, and this is a big but, on the other hand, a giant foreign company can totally crush smaller, local businesses. There are real risks of corruption, environmental damage if the rules are lax, and even a kind of cultural erosion as global brands start to take over.
If you want to see the upside in action, just get a load of this number. In 2020 alone, BMW's plant down in South Carolina, that's a German company investing in the U.S., exported SUVs worth over $8 billion. That's an incredible boost for American exports, and it's all thanks to FDI.
But here's the catch. A really big concern for these host countries is that the profits made in these foreign-owned factories don't actually stick around. A lot of the time, they get repatriated. That's just a fancy word that means the profits are sent back home to the company's headquarters. And when that happens, it can really limit the long-term economic boost for the nation that hosted the investment in the first place.
So you've got this really complex dance going on between the company's goals and the host country's experience. So now let's zoom out and look at the big picture, the major risks for the companies putting up the cash, and the political ideas that shape how governments deal with FDI to begin with.
Yeah, dropping billions of dollars in another country is definitely not for the faint of heart. Companies are staring down some major risks. You've got exchange rate risk, where a sudden currency crash can just vaporize your profits.
Then there's expropriation risk. That's the nightmare scenario where a new government just decides to seize your factory. And of course, there's regulatory risk, where a country could suddenly change its labor or environmental laws and make your entire business model completely unprofitable overnight.
And you know how a country decides to handle all these pros and cons isn't just random. A nation's whole attitude toward foreign investment is deeply, deeply rooted in its core political and economic beliefs about how the world ought to work.
And these beliefs pretty much fall into three different camps. On one extreme, you have the radical view. This sees big multinational corporations as tools of exploitation, and it tries to block all foreign investment. On the complete opposite side, you have the free market view, which sees FDI as a beautiful source of efficiency and welcomes it with totally open arms. And then, smack in the middle, you've got pragmatic nationalism. And this pragmatic approach is pretty much where most of the world lives today. It became the dominant view because, frankly, the extremes just didn't work out so well. The radical view led to economic isolation, and the pure free market view often left countries wide open to being taken advantage of. So pragmatic nationalism offers this middle path. You look at each investment case by case, and you only give it the green light if the benefits, like jobs and tech, are going to outweigh the potential costs.
So where does all this leave us? Well, foreign direct investment is, without a doubt, one of the most powerful forces shaping our world. It can create incredible wealth and opportunity, but it also brings some serious risks and disruption. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. For any given community or any country, is that trade-off always worth it?